right now, at this exact second, millions of Americans have their earbuds in.
Yeah, millions of them.
And, half of them are listening with a spiked heart rate to a terrifying 911 call from a staged double homicide,
Right.
while the other half are literally giggling about unseen fire pit footage from a reality TV show.
Which is such a wild contrast.
It really is. And in between,
Mhm.
people are absorbing intense geopolitical warnings, stressing over artificial intelligence, and dedicating over 3 hours to listening to grown men debate the historical significance of household appliances.
Yeah, that last one it's really something.
Welcome to the deep dive. I am so thrilled to get into this one today because we are taking a massive stack of data, specifically the official Spotify and Apple Podcast charts for late June 2026.
The raw data.
Exactly. And we're going to decode exactly what this says about you, the listener, and what it reveals about our collective psychology right now.
It's essentially the ultimate sociological mirror. We have top lists, trending lists, top show rankings across both Spotify and Apple. And when you look at the sheer variety, it is absolutely staggering.
Oh, completely.
We're going to examine everything from these massive, unstructured comedy hangout sessions and high-stakes sports drama to some incredibly grisly true crime investigations.
And the politics, right?
Yeah, hyper-intense political debates and just quirky pop culture escapism.
Definitely. And before we get started, I want to say that this episode is sponsored by podcastcharts.net, the website with all the latest top trending podcast episodes that people are talking about.
And trust me, looking at these charts, people are talking about some truly wild things.
They really are. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because we have to figure out how the human brain goes from listening to a billionaire's stark warning about the stock market crashing on one end of the spectrum
Right.
to literally giggling about reality TV in the same breath.
It induces a kind of cognitive whiplash, really, if you just look at it from a high altitude.
Yeah, whiplash is the perfect word for it.
But when you actually get down into the weeds of the data, you start to uncover the specific underlying psychological needs that each of these completely different genres is fulfilling.
So I want to start with perhaps the most counterintuitive trend on the charts right now because it completely shatters a myth that I feel like we are fed every single day.
The attention span thing.
Yes. We constantly hear this narrative that our attention spans are completely shot. We hear that the TikTok brain has taken over humanity.
Right.
And the prevailing logic is that if you cannot hook someone in the first 3 seconds with a flashing light, a fast cut, some crazy sound effect,
They're going to swipe away instantly.
exactly,
Yeah.
we are supposedly incapable of focusing on anything.
The prevailing wisdom in the media industry has been entirely dictated by that assumption. Shorter, faster, louder. Condense the information. Remove the pauses. Just give the audience the absolute bare minimum of friction.
But the data we are looking at today completely contradicts that entire theory.
Completely.
We are seeing massive, multi-hour, completely unstructured conversational formats absolutely dominating the top of the charts. Let's look at the Spotify data first.
Okay.
Joe Rogan takes the top 3 episode spots entirely.
Not surprising, but still impressive.
Right. He is sitting at number 1 with comedian Tim Dillon, number 2 with actor Scott Eastwood, and number 3 with Taylor Sheridan, the creator of Yellowstone.
And these are not quick, snappy, heavily edited interviews.
No, they're long, meandering journeys.
Right.
But then you jump over to the Apple data, and we see, pardon my take, from Barstool Sports with a trending episode that clocks in at a staggering 3 hours and 12 minutes.
Let's just pause and put 3 hours and 12 minutes into perspective.
Please.
You could watch an entire cinematic epic. You could fly from New York to Miami, or, you could listen to a single conversation on Pardon My Take.
And millions of people are actively choosing the latter.
Right. It's fascinating.
I really want to dive into the specifics of that Pardon My Take episode because the content is just a complete smorgasbord of seemingly disconnected topics.
All over the place.
It really is. So first, they're covering Dave Portnoy's new book, Cancel Me If You Can.
Okay, standard Barstool stuff.
Right. But then they pivot entirely to talking to country singer Zach Top about his rapid rise to stardom.
A music interview.
Yeah. Then, out of nowhere, they are dissecting the fallout of golfer Phil Mickelson getting kicked out of clubs.
Golf drama.
And then, As if that wasn't enough content for one sitting, they dedicate a massive chunk of time to debating what they call the Mount Rushmore of American attractions foreigners should visit.
Which is just so niche.
It's just, a sprawling mess of a conversation.
It is a complete structural departure from traditional broadcasting.
Right.
I mean, in a traditional radio or television show, you have a tight act structure.
Right.
You have a rigid adherence to a single theme.
Yep.
You have commercial breaks that dictate the pacing.
Gotta hit the hard outs.
Exactly. And you have a host actively steering the guest to hit specific talking points. But what, pardon my take, and Joe Rogan are doing is it's fundamentally different.
Oh, so?
They're essentially broadcasting the dynamic of a group of friends sitting at a table at a bar, just letting the conversation drift wherever the current naturally takes it without any artificial constraints.
See, here's where it gets really interesting to me, and I need to push back on this a little bit.
Okay.
Because in an era where we have the sum total of human knowledge at our fingertips,
Right.
where artificial intelligence is rapidly advancing, why are millions of people dedicating over 3 hours to listen to guys debate this stuff?
Whoa.
I mean, on Spotify, we see Barstool hitting the number 8 spot overall with another episode that includes a debate on the Mount Rushmore of household appliances.
Which is hilarious.
It is. But we are talking about grown men arguing over whether a toaster is more historically significant than a vacuum cleaner. It feels like an incredibly inefficient use of time.
Right. But it's only inefficient if you assume the listener is tuning in primarily to acquire information.
Okay.
But that is not the mechanism at play here. When we consume traditional media, we're usually looking for a transaction.
Give me the facts.
Exactly. We want the news, we want the weather forecast, we want the score of the game, we want data. But when listeners are tuning into a 3-hour episode of Pardon My Take or the Joe Rogan Experience, they aren't seeking data.
What are they seeking, then?
They're seeking companionship. It is the mechanics of a parasocial relationship at scale.
Okay, so it's less like attending a lecture and more like substituting the local pub for your AirPods.
Yes.
Exactly that. But is there a psychological advantage to a parasocial relationship? Because, you're listening to a conversation, but you aren't actually required to contribute anything to it. You're just a passive observer.
There's a massive psychological advantage, especially right now. It's about cognitive load.
Cognitive load.
Yeah. Engaging in a real-world social interaction requires energy. You have to read body language. You have to formulate responses, worry about how you're being perceived, and, navigate social friction.
Right. It takes work.
A parasocial relationship provides the warmth and familiarity of socialization with zero cognitive demand. You can put your earbuds in while you're folding laundry or commuting or doing data entry at work, and you aren't alone anymore.
But you also aren't burdened by the demands of actual social interaction.
Precisely.
So it's almost like emotional white noise.
Emotional white noise. I like that.
You know how people use white noise machines to mask disruptive sounds in their environment so they can sleep?
Sure.
This familiar, rambling banter masks the disruptive underlying anxieties of modern life. It just lowers the brain's baseline stress level just by providing a continuous, predictable hum of human interaction.
Emotional white noise is a brilliant way to frame it, because in a world that feels increasingly isolated, high pressure, and frankly, unpredictable,
Very unpredictable.
there is an intense psychological comfort in just hanging out with voices that you know intimately. You understand their inside jokes.
Right.
Their political leanings, their sports biases, their specific verbal tics. So when they spend 20 minutes debating household appliances, the appeal isn't the appliances themselves.
No one cares about the toaster.
Right. The appeal is the familiarity of the banter. It signals to your brain that you're in a safe, low-stakes environment.
And that long-form structure creates this incredible loyalty, doesn't it? Because you feel like you have earned your spot in the friend group just by putting in the hours.
You've paid your dues.
Yeah. So when they casually mention Dave Portnoy's new book, Cancel Me If You Can, the listener already has years of context about Dave Portnoy. They know the lore of the network, it's world building, but instead of a fantasy novel, it's just the ongoing lives of these podcast hosts.
Exactly. And that long form allows for a kind of authenticity, or at least the performance of authenticity, that you just cannot fake in a tight 7-minute produced segment.
You can't hide for 3 hours.
No, you can't. When a conversation goes on for 3 hours, the polished facade inevitably drops. People stumble over their words. They get legitimately angry about silly things. They go down weird, obsessive rabbit holes.
Think Mount Rushmore of household appliances.
Exactly. It mimics the natural, imperfect cadence of human socialization. And because so many people are lacking that deep, unstructured socialization in their physical lives, they're sourcing it digitally.
It's fascinating to think about the digital footprint of that. Like, a historian looking back at this week in June 2026 would see that while we were dealing with massive geopolitical shifts and economic warnings, millions of us were anchoring our mental health to a debate about whether a blender is better than a microwave.
Right. But, as much as listeners clearly want that unstructured, low-stakes banter, the charts reveal a completely different, almost paradoxical craving operating at the exact same time.
Okay, what do you mean?
Sometimes we don't want emotional white noise. Sometimes we want to be grabbed by the collar, shaken, and pulled into a meticulously crafted high-stakes narrative.
Which brings us to perhaps the darkest and yet most consistently dominant corner of the charts.
Yes.
So true crime gives us the comfort of emotional white noise, but with the volume turned all the way up on anxiety. Because looking at this data, true crime absolutely rules the ecosystem.
It is a juggernaut.
A juggernaut that shows no signs of slowing down. On the Apple charts, Crime Junkie is sitting at the #1 spot for top shows overall, and indeed the #1 spot for top subscriber shows.
People are literally opening their wallets and paying a premium just to get more of it.
They can't get enough. Dateline NBC is everywhere. We see Morbid, we see Serialously with Annie Elise. It is a relentless cultural appetite for the macabre.
It's deeply embedded in the cultural zeitgeist. And I think it's important to note that these aren't just sensationalist surface-level overviews.
No.
These podcasts are delivering incredibly detailed, granular investigations into human depravity.
Let's look at a specific case that is dominating the charts right now, because the details are what hook you. Crime Junkie has an episode breaking down a 2023 case from Virginia. It's the double homicide of Christine Banfield and Joseph Ryan. And the setup is just chilling.
It really is.
You have a 37-year-old woman and a 39-year-old man found fatally injured inside a home.
And the initial narratives provided to the authorities by the surviving witness was something straight out of a Hollywood home invasion thriller.
Right. So investigators arrive at the chaotic scene, and they are told by Christine's husband, a man named Brendan Banfield, that Joseph Ryan was a violent intruder.
And here is the detail that makes the story explode.
Wait for it.
Brendan Banfield is a federal agent.
Yes. So he tells the police that he intervened, that he used his training to try and save his wife from this violent attacker.
On the surface, it's an absolute tragedy, but a straightforward one.
Right.
A heroic husband, a home invasion, gone terribly wrong.
But the podcast painstakingly dives into how that initial narrative entirely unraveled under scrutiny.
Yeah.
Because the physical evidence at the scene, and crucially, the digital footprint left behind, told a completely different story.
The digital footprint is where I want to pause, because I find myself playing detective here.
Oh, same.
As investigators examined the digital evidence, they uncovered this massive, twisted possibility. They found evidence that a fake online persona was created and used to lure Joseph Ryan to the home.
Lured him there.
Yeah. That the entire bloody scene might have been meticulously staged to conceal a premeditated double homicide.
Wow.
And the crux of the entire podcast episode revolves around this terrifying 15-minute window. What exactly happened in the 15 minutes between the two separate 911 calls that were placed?
It is the ultimate locked room mystery, but it's playing out in real life.
Yes.
You have a husband who is a federal agent, someone who intimately knows how crime scenes are processed.
Right.
A victim who was actively lured to the location, a scene that appears staged, and a crucial unexplained gap in the timeline. It's compelling on a deeply primal level.
Okay, but why go through the effort of luring someone just to stage a home invasion? If the goal was simply to commit a crime, why introduce this incredibly complex digital element of a fake persona?
That's the question.
It feels like the perpetrators outsmarted themselves by leaving a digital paper trail.
And that is exactly the kind of critical thinking these podcasts are designed to elicit from the listener. You know, you are immediately drawn into the puzzle.
Right, you're trying to solve it with them.
Yes. The mechanism of luring someone with a fake persona suggests premeditation, yes, but it also suggests a desire to control the narrative.
Sure.
If the perpetrator can establish Joseph Ryan as an unpredictable aggressor before the police even arrive, they control the initial framing of the investigation.
But as you pointed out, they failed to account for the preeminence of digital forensics.
Right. A deleted account or a spoofed number is never truly gone. And that revelation, the unmasking of the digital deception, that is the psychological payload for the listener.
It's the moment the puzzle pieces snap together.
Exactly. And it isn't just Crime Junkie delivering that payload. Let's talk about the Serialously episode with Annie Elise, which is also rapidly climbing the charts.
Okay, what case is that one?
They're covering the Gregory Rice case. And again, the contrast in the specific details is jarring. You have a routine family fishing trip on a peaceful South Carolina river.
Sounds nice.
Right. But then this family spots something unusual floating in the water. It turns out to be the body of 46-year-old Gregory Rice. But the brutality of it is staggering.
Oh, wow.
He wasn't just drowned, he was wrapped tightly in a tarp, weighed down by heavy cinder blocks and riddled with bullet holes.
Oh, my God. The dissonance between the setting and the tranquil family fishing trip and the horrific, violent discovery is what initially grabs the attention.
Yeah.
But the podcast doesn't just linger on the gore of the discovery. It unravels the complex, hidden investigation that followed.
And it gets so dark so fast. The investigation leads down a path of anonymous text messages trying to throw authorities off the scent.
Right.
It uncovers deep secrets about the victim and the suspects, including these bizarre, unsettling details about soundproof bedrooms.
Soundproof bedroom.
Yeah. It transforms from a simple body recovery into a sprawling story about the affair next door turning deadly.
Wow. So we really have to look at this sociologically. Why is the listener, who we already know, is stressed out by the complexities of the real world, actively choosing to spend their precious free time immersing themselves in the horrific, real-life murders of Christine Banfield, Joseph Ryan, and Gregory Rice?
I admit, it seems masochistic.
It does.
We just talked about people using podcasts as emotional white noise to lower their stress, and now we're saying millions of people are using podcasts to listen to stories about cinder blocks and soundproof bedrooms.
It seems contradictory, absolutely.
Yeah.
But psychologically, true crime offers something that the real world, and specifically real-world news, almost never provides.
Which is?
It offers cognitive closure. It offers resolution.
Uh-huh.
When you look at the episode breakdowns on podcastcharts.net, you see how these heavily serialized investigative episodes keep listeners coming back week after week with incredibly high retention rates. We fundamentally crave the puzzle-solving aspect.
Because the real world is chaotic.
Exactly. There are massive systemic problems we cannot fix. There are geopolitical crises that feel overwhelming and endless.
So true crime gives us a contained chaos.
Yes.
A murder mystery, no matter how gruesome the details are, has a definitive shape to it.
Precisely. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. There's a victim, there's a complex investigation fraught with twists, and ideally, there is justice.
Right.
It makes a terrifying, unpredictable world feel momentarily manageable when the bad guy is ultimately outsmarted and caught. The listener gets to play armchair detective.
Which is fun.
It is. They get to engage their critical thinking skills, examine the timeline gap in the Banfield case, or analyze the motive behind the anonymous texts in the Gregory Rice case, all from the absolute safety of their living room couch.
It's a way to confront our deepest evolutionary fears, mortality, betrayal, violence,
Right.
but in a strictly controlled environment. You are staring directly into the abyss of human nature, but you can hit pause on your phone at any time and go make a sandwich.
Exactly. You have total control over the horror.
And importantly, the hosts of these shows act as necessary guides through that horror.
Yes, that's a huge part of it.
Right, because when you listen to Ashley Flowers on Crime Junkie or Annie Elise on Serialously, they aren't just reciting facts clinically. They are actively expressing the shock, the disgust, and the empathy that the listener is feeling.
They hold your hand as you walk through the dark woods.
Beautifully put. So yes, the content is horrific, but the experience of consuming it alongside a trusted host is deeply structuring for the human brain. We desperately want to know that if things go wrong, someone will care enough to figure it out.
We need the reassurance that the puzzle can and will be solved. That makes perfect sense. We want high stakes, we want intense drama, but we want clear winners and losers at the end of the narrative.
But what happens when the listener wants that clear binary of good guys versus bad guys without the heavy, depressing burden of actual murder?
Where do they go to vent that intense tribal energy safely?
Exactly. And that brings us to another massive pillar of the podcast charts right now, playing out on a global stage.
Sports.
Yes, sports. But looking at the nuances of this data, it's not just about the score lines or the statistics. Sports are acting as a massive cultural unifier and simultaneously a fierce cultural divider.
Which is fascinating.
It is absolutely dominating the Apple charts. We're seeing a massive focus on two distinct arenas, the global spectacle of the World Cup and the absolute transactional chaos of NBA trades.
Let's start with the World Cup, because this isn't just sports podcast talking about it.
Right.
The Daily from the New York Times, which is traditionally a hard news political heavyweight, has pivoted entirely to soccer for a major episode.
Which tells you everything you need to know about the scale of the cultural event.
Yeah. When the Daily decides to dedicate its premium, highly valuable real estate to a sports tournament instead of the Supreme Court ruling or an economic policy shift, it's because the tournament has fundamentally transcended the sport itself.
The numbers they cite in the episode are wild. Like, we are barely 2 weeks into the World Cup, and it has already broken massive records.
Oh, yeah.
They're citing the highest stadium attendance ever recorded, the most goals scored in the history of the tournament. But the Daily doesn't just focus on the field. They zero in on the sociology of what's happening off the field.
Because the tournament is taking place right here in America.
Exactly. And you have this incredible, overwhelming wave of international visitors clashing and melding with American culture in real time. They bring on Tariq Panja, a global sports correspondent, to break down the magic and the friction of this massive cultural collision.
It's soft diplomacy playing out on the streets of American cities.
It really is.
You have fervent fans from dozens of different nations occupying the same public squares, eating at the same local restaurants, riding the same public transit systems. It's a fascinating temporary sociological experiment in global integration.
But the Daily goes even deeper into the human element, and this is where it gets really moving. They highlight a specific story about 2 lifelong fans of the Iranian national team.
Wow. Okay.
And these fans are trying to navigate the agonizing complexity of national pride. They're cheering passionately for their country's athletes on a soccer pitch while simultaneously dealing with the horrific backdrop of a war involving their homeland.
That is heavy.
Extremely. How do you reconcile your deep love for your country's people and athletes with the controversial or destructive actions of your country's government? It is incredibly heavy, nuanced stuff for a sports episode.
That is exactly where sports elevate beyond a mere game.
Yeah.
The World Cup is uniquely positioned to act as a proxy for global geopolitics. A match between 2 specific nations often carries the unseen weight of historical grievances, of ongoing conflicts, of shifting alliances. But the brilliance of it is that this massive geopolitical tension is played out within the strict, impartial rules of a 90-minute game.
So it contains the conflict.
Exactly.
Contrast that global historical weight with what's happening in the NBA on these charts. Because the NBA content is pure, unfiltered, transactional chaos.
I love it.
We have Bill Simmons and Zach Lowe from The Ringer literally going live on Netflix, which, by the way, is a massive media crossover event in itself.
Audio native personalities broadcasting live on a video streaming giant.
Yes. Just to discuss a crazy month of player movement in the NBA.
It is the soap opera of professional basketball.
Exactly. They aren't talking about the history of nations. They're dissecting Jaylen Brown trade rumors. They are screaming into their microphones about LaMelo Ball being traded to the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Right.
They are breaking down the implications of Miles Bridges going to the Phoenix Suns. It is rapid-fire, high-drama, transactional sports. Who won the trade? Who got fleeced? Which general manager is betraying which player?
And what's particularly interesting about the Bill Simmons episode is how effortlessly it blurs the rigid lines between celebrity, pop culture, and sports.
Yes, because right in the middle of this intense technical breakdown about LaMelo Ball's fit in Minnesota, they bring on Taylor Sheridan.
The creator of Yellowstone.
Yeah.
Who we just saw dominating the Spotify charts with Joe Rogan.
Right. The guy who is single-handedly building a massive television empire in Montana. He crosses over onto a hardcore basketball podcast to talk about his new book, How to Survive in Prison.
Interesting pivot.
Yeah, he talks about his humble beginnings in screenwriting, how his creative process is completely different from everyone else in the industry, and basically airs his grievances about the structural problems with Hollywood. So I have to ask, what is the mechanism here? Why do hard news giants like the Daily and Hollywood heavyweights like Taylor Sheridan constantly intersect with sports? What is the gravitational pull?
Well, it goes directly back to what we were discussing about tribalism.
Okay.
Sports provide a necessary, quote-unquote, safe arena for our natural human tribalism. Human beings are evolutionarily hardwired to form groups.
To establish an us and a them.
Exactly. Historically, that tribal instinct was absolutely necessary for survival. You needed your tribe to protect you from predators and rival groups.
Right.
But in the modern world, That exact same instinct is often the root cause of war, political polarization, and systemic conflict.
So sports are essentially a pressure release valve for that ancient evolutionary instinct. Like, we get to exercise the muscle without burning down the village.
Precisely. We can paint our faces in team colors, scream at the top of our lungs in a stadium, feel genuine, visceral anger towards a rival team, and battle it out online over whether Messi's free kick was rigged or whether a specific NBA draft pick was a disaster. But at the end of the day, when the clock runs out, it's just a game. The emotional stakes feel incredibly high in the moment, but the actual real-world consequences are zero.
Zero.
It allows us to experience the intense thrill of victory and the crushing agony of defeat without any actual bloodshed.
And for creators like Taylor Sheridan or news outlets like The Daily, tapping into that sports audience means tapping into a massive, highly engaged, emotionally primed demographic that shares a universal language.
Yes, it is a shared language.
Okay.
Whether you are an A-list actor or a local politician, if you can intelligently discuss the Jaylen Brown trade, you can connect with millions of people instantly.
It is the ultimate modern water cooler topic.
Completely.
But there is a dark side to that tribal instinct, isn't there? Because what happens when that deep-seated need for an us and a them, that intense desire for absolute winners and losers, moves out of the safe confines of the sports arena?
It gets dangerous.
Yeah. What happens when that tribal energy moves into the realm where the consequences are very, very real?
That is the pivotal transition, and it brings us to the political charts.
Oh, okay.
And I think we need to establish a very strict parameter here before we dive into this data.
Definitely.
As we look at these political charts, we are acting purely as observers. We're just looking at the mirror. We're examining what the listener is actively choosing to consume. And the charts reflect a deeply, deeply polarized America that is essentially consuming entirely different realities.
It is vital to state that we aren't validating or debunking the content of these shows. We are just analyzing the diet of the listener.
Exactly.
And the data is stark. There is no longer a shared national narrative. We are looking at two distinct media ecosystems operating in parallel universes.
Let's lay out the data for the right-leaning echoes first.
Okay. The Tucker Carlson network is charting highly, and his episodes are covering a very specific, interconnected set of anxieties and topics.
Like what?
He has an episode featuring J.D. Vance issuing a strict warning to Israel. He's talking about what the episode calls the last desperate move of Israel firsters, Iran's growing strength in the region, and analyzing conservative radio host Mark Levin's commentary. He also has a highly ranked episode promising new Epstein reveals.
Okay, let's pause on the terminology there, because for a listener who might not be deep in the political weeds, terms like Israel firsters need context.
Right, I was just going to ask for an ELI 5 on that, explain it like I'm 5. What exactly does that phrasing signify in the context of this specific podcast ecosystem?
In political discourse, the term Israel firster is generally used as a pejorative.
Okay.
It's used by critics to describe American politicians or commentators who they believe prioritize the interests of the state of Israel over the domestic or foreign interests of the United States.
Got it.
In the context of Tucker Carlson's episode, featuring J.D. Vance warning Israel, it signals a broader conversation happening on the right about American isolationism versus foreign intervention, specifically questioning long-standing alliances and where American resources should be deployed.
Thank you. That context is crucial. And right alongside Tucker Carlson in this ecosystem is The Ben Shapiro Show, specifically episode 2455, which is almost entirely focused on the domestic culture war.
Culture war is a huge driver.
Oh, massive. Shapiro's episode title literally outlines the battlefield for his listeners. He is discussing the left allegedly rejecting the American flag as the 250th anniversary of the country approaches.
Right.
He's doing a deep dive into the intense controversy over Texas mandating the teaching of the Bible in public schools. And he is specifically targeting progressive Congresswoman AOC.
Very familiar beats.
Very. Then you have Candace Owens, who is doing an emergency update on the Charlie Kirk case, discussing how conservative activist Charlie Kirk is being unfairly targeted by powerful elites, calling it a Truman Show-level proof of systemic targeting against conservatives.
Strong narrative.
And then, interestingly, you even have Vox, which is generally a left-leaning outlet, dropping an episode titled How Trump Lost the Bro Vote, which is charting high because it attempts to analyze this very specific male demographic.
So that is one half of the top charts.
Yeah.
It's a reality focused heavily on cultural preservation, a deep-seated distrust of legacy institutions, and a pervasive narrative of elite targeting.
Right.
But then if you scroll just a few spots down on the charts, or look at a different demographic slice of the data, the reality completely and totally flips.
It completely flips. On the left-leaning and centrist side of the charts, Pod Save America is dropping heavy hitters with aggressive titles like The McGrath Supreme Court's Assault on America and Trump Sabotages Trump Agenda.
Right, so they are looking at the exact same government institutions, but framing them as being under a completely different type of existential threat.
Exactly. And you have veteran journalist John Dickerson sitting down with Tim Miller asking a fundamental structural question about the media itself. When the media helps rewrite reality.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, this specific episode is fascinating because it's an internal critique. Dickerson is heavily criticizing CBS News. He's claiming that CBS essentially failed the country and failed democracy by choosing to settle what he calls a frivolous 60 Minutes lawsuit originating from Donald Trump.
That's a huge claim.
And he goes further. He explicitly accuses sections of the media of actively trying to change the historical narrative of the Minneapolis protests to retroactively benefit Trump's political standing. It's a deep structural critique of the media's power to shape the truth.
And the Intersections with Hard News podcasts reflect this exact same split.
Tell me about it.
The New York Times charts, with an episode covering the Supreme Court delivering big wins for Trump's immigration agenda, analyzing the severe policy implications of those rulings.
Right.
Meanwhile, the All In podcast, which is hosted by tech billionaires and usually focuses on venture capital,
Oh, I've heard of that one.
is charting with an episode discussing Democratic Socialists sweeping local elections in New York City, alongside intense discussions about the AI memory crunch and China rapidly catching up in coding capabilities.
Hold on, let's do another ELI 5 here.
Sure.
AI memory crunch. I hear about AI every day, but what exactly is the memory crunch they are discussing on All In?
Simply put, artificial intelligence models require massive amounts of data to learn and function. Think of it like a library.
Okay.
The AI has read every book in the library to get smart. But as we demand AI to do more complex tasks like generating video or writing code or managing logistics, it needs to hold more information in its short-term memory to process those tasks simultaneously.
So it's a hardware issue.
Yes. The memory crunch refers to the physical and computational limits of current hardware. We are literally running out of server space and processing power to handle the sheer volume of memory these advanced AI models require to operate efficiently. It's a massive bottleneck in the tech industry right now.
That makes perfect sense. So you have the tech elites worrying about server space while also worrying about socialists winning local elections.
Exactly.
It is just a dizzying amount of conflicting information across these charts. You have one side of the country hearing that the Supreme Court is saving the nation's borders, and the other side hearing that the exact same court is leading an assault on America.
Right.
One side hears about socialists taking over New York. The other side hears about conservative elites rewriting protest history. I want to ask about the mechanism of this. How does the brain process this level of cognitive dissonance?
Well, the reality is the brain doesn't process the cognitive dissonance.
It doesn't.
No, because the algorithms are designed to ensure you never actually experience it.
Oh, wow.
We're looking at a technology-on-demand audio that allows the listener to curate their own reality with absolute surgical precision. In the old days of broadcast television, everyone watched the same evening news broadcast.
Right, you had like 3 channels.
Exactly. You might have fiercely disagreed on the interpretation of the events, but the baseline facts of the day were the baseline facts of the day.
There was a shared foundation of reality, even if you argued about what to build on top of it.
Yes, but today, there is no shared foundation. There is only the feed you actively choose to subscribe to. If you only listen to Tucker Carlson and Ben Shapiro, your understanding of the existential threats facing the country is completely fundamentally different from someone who only listens to Pod Save America and The Daily.
Completely different.
The podcast feed acts as an impenetrable, self-reinforcing silo, and the algorithms that power Spotify and Apple reward this behavior.
Because it keeps you on the app.
Exactly. They monitor what you listen to, and they feed you more of what you already agree with because that lack of friction keeps you listening longer.
So it biologically soothes the brain to have your biases confirmed. It removes the stress of having your worldview challenged.
It validates your worldview. It provides a dopamine hit by telling you that you are right, you are righteous, and they, whoever the they is in your particular feed, are wrong and dangerous.
It's that tribalism we talked about with the NBA and the World Cup, but weaponized with actual legislative consequences.
Yes.
And honestly, it is exhausting when every single political update is framed as a desperate battle for the very soul of the nation, when every Supreme Court decision is framed as either a total triumph or an existential assault. It creates a constant draining state of hypervigilance in the listener.
Which perfectly logically explains the final major trend we are seeing on these charts.
The palate cleanser.
Because when the sheer weight of the real world, the gruesome reality of true crime, the geopolitical tension underlying the World Cup, the hyperpolarized existential dread of the political charts becomes too much for the nervous system to bear, the listener desperately needs an escape hatch.
And boy, do they take it.
They really do.
A massive chunk of our collective listening time is purely, unapologetically dedicated to escaping the real world through celebrity gossip, pop culture analysis, and the utterly delightfully bizarre.
It's the cognitive release valve for the modern era. When the cognitive load gets too heavy, the brain demands glossy, low-stakes entertainment. Let's look at the sheer scale of the pop culture consumption on these charts.
Let's talk about the toast. They have an episode titled Made for Manhattan that is just tearing up the charts right now.
Okay.
And what are they talking about? Are they talking about the AI memory crunch? No. They are doing a massive deep dive into rumors, and let's be clear, just rumors, about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce's upcoming wedding.
Just rumors.
They're citing unnamed sources from Page 6, speculating wildly that this wedding is going to be bigger than the Met Gala, and debating whether Stevie Nicks and Tim McGraw are set to perform at the reception.
The geopolitical stakes could not possibly be lower, and that is precisely the point of the episode.
Exactly. After you just listened to an hour about the Supreme Court altering the fabric of the country, your brain literally needs to obsess over a hypothetical floral arrangement at a pop star's wedding.
It's a necessary palate cleanser.
It really is. And the episode doesn't stop there. The hosts, Ben Salfer and Claudia Oshry, are dissecting New York Knicks star Jalen Brunson, showing up to support actress Mariska Hargitay at her Broadway play.
So random.
They're analyzing a surprise appearance by Jennifer Lopez. And then in a pivot that I just love, they pivot to demanding unseen fire pit footage from the reality show Love Island USA.
Because of course they do.
Because fans are speculating that 2 islanders were secretly kicked out of the villa.
It's modern mythology. We're tracking the movements, the alliances, and the feuds of these larger-than-life figures. Taylor Swift, star athletes, reality TV contestants. In the exact same way, ancient cultures tracked the dramatic interpersonal conflicts of the gods on Mount Olympus.
Wow. Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
It provides a shared cultural narrative that isn't rooted in political survival. But it's not just the glossy rumor mill gossip that is charting. Listeners are also seeking a very specific kind of grounded vulnerability from the A-list.
Yes, the celebrity as normal human genre.
Exactly.
We see Smartless, the massive podcast hosted by Jason Bateman, Sean Hayes, and Will Arnett, charting high with an episode featuring Emma Thompson.
Oh, legend.
And the description of the episode is just delightful. They aren't talking about intense method acting or high-pressure Oscar campaigns. They're talking about Barney's, boredom, and haggis.
Just normal stuff.
It's Emma Thompson, a legendary actress, just being brilliantly, hilariously mundane.
And our armchair expert, Dax Shepard, sits down with Olivia Wilde for a massive 2-hour-plus interview. And it's an incredibly grounded, nuanced conversation.
What do they get into?
She is discussing what it was actually like growing up with parents who were high-stakes war correspondents, trying to find her footing and identity at a strict boarding school, learning the quote-unquote wrong lessons about self-worth in brutal LA audition rooms.
Oh, wow.
And making the massive, risky pivot from acting on a teen soap like The OC to directing acclaimed feature films like Booksmart and Don't Worry, Darling.
She talks extensively about how parenting teaches you patience and humility, and she makes this really poignant point about why we as a society need to relearn the lost art of disagreement.
Which is incredibly ironic.
Very ironic, given what we just discussed about the political charts being completely siloed. But there is clearly a deep hunger for these long-form, empathetic conversations with people who usually only exist in carefully curated 15-second sound bites.
It humanizes the elite. It strips away the PR polish and makes the listener feel like they're eavesdropping on a private therapy session or an intimate dinner party.
Yeah.
It fulfills that same parasocial need for companionship that we saw with Joe Rogan and Barstool, but with a different demographic.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the escapism isn't just limited to celebrities and reality TV. The charts show a deep, abiding fascination with the quirky, the existential, and the downright bizarre.
Oh, the quirky section of the charts is my absolute favorite part of this data set.
It's so fun.
You have the Y-Files exploring a completely fringe, massive theory, the asteroid behind the Bible's most famous disaster. They are seamlessly mixing ancient theology with astronomy and conspiracy theory.
All right.
Then you have Vox asking a massive, terrifying existential question in a tight, highly produced episode. Can we cheat death?
They're exploring the absolute cutting edge of longevity science, specifically focusing on peptides and biohacking, which we also see trending with a dedicated Spotify Studios episode entirely focused on the science of peptides.
Okay, final ELI 5 for me.
Hit me.
I see ads for peptides everywhere right now. What actually are they in the context of longevity science?
So think of proteins as big, complex Lego castles in your body.
Okay, Lego Castle.
Peptides are just smaller strings of those same Lego blocks, amino acids.
Oh, I see.
Because they are smaller, they're easier for your body to absorb and use. In longevity science and biohacking, specific peptides are being studied and used to signal the body to do things like produce more human growth hormone, heal tissues faster, or reduce inflammation, theoretically slowing down the aging process.
Got it. So we have people trying to cheat death with tiny protein strings, and right next to that on the charts, you have the Wall Street Journal reporting on an intense, highly secretive internal debate at OpenAI over how their technology might intersect with mass shootings and AI safety protocols. It is a complete, chaotic smorgasbord of the human experience. You can go from the absolute highest heights of existential technology debates directly into an episode of Giggly Squad with Hannah Berner and Paige DeSorbo, which is literally titled Giggling About an Emergency Press Conference.
It ultimately proves the central point about you, the listener, and human nature in general.
Now we're complicated.
The listener isn't just one static thing. Marketers, demographics, and algorithms constantly try to put us in neat little boxes. They say, this person clicked on a political article, so only feed them politics. Or this person likes sports, so they don't care about science.
Right, they try to silo us.
But the charts unequivocally show that human curiosity is omnivorous. The learner who wants to deeply understand the geopolitical ramifications of the World Cup or the intricate details of OpenAI's internal safety debates also secretly, or perhaps not so secretly, wants to know exactly what unseen drama happened around the Love Island fire pit.
We contain multitudes. Your podcast feed is essentially a digital footprint of your brain's daily diet.
Exactly.
Think about the sheer volume of what we've unpacked today. In the span of a single week, the collective listening audience demanded the deep, unstructured, emotional white noise of a 3-hour bro hangout on, pardon my take.
Yeah.
We demanded the intricate, morbid puzzle solving of Crime Junkie investigating a staged double homicide.
We wanted that closure.
We sought out the tribal thrill and high drama of the NBA draft and global soccer. We rigorously, almost defensively, sought validation for our specific political worldview, retreating into our respective silos.
And fun.
When we couldn't take it anymore, we demanded the glossy, low-stakes escape of Taylor Swift's hypothetical wedding plans and theories about biblical asteroids.
It is a profound, chaotic reflection of a society that is desperately trying to process an overwhelming amount of high-stakes information while simultaneously desperately trying to self-soothe.
It really is. It's the soundtrack of the zeitgeist.
And I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you look at your own podcast feed today.
Oh, this ought to be good.
Imagine an alien civilization, or perhaps just a human historian 1,000 years from now, digging through the digital rubble of the 21st century and uncovering these specific Spotify and Apple podcast charts for June 2026.
They'd be so confused.
What would they think of us? Would they view us as a deeply intellectual, truth-seeking society obsessed with long-form debate, intricate justice, and technological advancement? Or would they see a fractured, paranoid culture siloed into opposing political realities, desperately seeking endless distraction through celebrities and 3-hour arguments about household appliances just to avoid confronting a chaotic world?
Yeah.
As you queue up your next listen, ask yourself, which side of history is your feed feeding?
Wow. That is a question that will sit with me for a long time. Our cultural thermometer might be broken, but the mirror these charts provide is crystal clear.
It certainly is.
For more podcast reviews, rankings, episode breakdowns, and the latest podcast news, visit podcastcharts.net. Keep listening, keep questioning, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.